today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. What is another interesting situation in the women's featherweight division? An interesting match. Unbeaten up-and-comer Elizabeth Oshoba of Nigeria is set to take on Italy's own Camilla Panatta on November 1st in Dubai for what is a WBA gold title in the featherweight division. The WBA is back to mass-producing secondary titles, trinket titles, to collect that many more sanctioning fees from that many more fighters. The best way to think of the WBA gold title is as being just underneath their interim title, which is just underneath their full title. Elizabeth Oshoba sports an unblemished record of 8 wins with no losses, no draws, 5 knockouts. A fighter that we've talked about in a previous video. Dangerous fighter, a dark horse in the featherweight division. A fighter that perhaps not everybody's familiar with, but everybody needs to be worried about. She's going to be fighting Camilla, who sports a professional record of 7 wins with 1 loss, 1 draw, 1 recorded knockout, having never been knocked out in 9 professional bouts. Born in Italy, but based out of America, Florida to be more specific, and it's not uncommon to see Camilla rubbing elbows with a lot of Mexican fighters, former champions Miguel Berchelt, Erica Cruz. It seems that she came here to learn from the influence of American and Mexican boxing. Not just, I think she serviced as a sparring partner for Katie Taylor on at least 1 occasion. Last in action last month on the 31st opposite the ring, Sarah Cormona, who she won a unanimous decision against. She's fighting Elizabeth. Very impressive, very dangerous Elizabeth Oshoba, who we talked about. This is a fighter with a lot of tools and a lot of skills in tandem with a lot of size and a lot of power. That marriage of ability and physicality. Things are shaking, rattling, and rolling in the women's featherweight division. It's heating up as Elizabeth Oshoba last saw action in June of this year opposite the ring Agustina Rojas, who she stopped in 3 rounds. Elizabeth saw action 2 times this year, once in January, then again in June. She's knocked out her last 2 opponents. She knocked out an unbeaten Michelle Braga. She knocked out Agustina Rojas. Will she knock out Camilla Panatta? It's possible. Camilla Panatta, who ranks in at number 9 in the WBA's current rank standings, with Elizabeth Oshoba right behind her at number 10. So you figure that whoever wins the fight is going to climb up those ranks, come that much closer to fighting for the full title. This puts the winner of Miranda versus Almengor in the crosshairs of the winner of Oshoba versus Panatta. That whoever wins Oshoba versus Panatta, and I think it's going to be Elizabeth Oshoba, they'll be gunning for the winner of Miranda versus Almengor, which we talked about in my previous video. But not just them. You will notice that the United Kingdom's own Karis Artingstall ranks in at number 6. I remember a couple of weeks ago, Elizabeth Oshoba was calling out Karis Artingstall by name. She says she wants to fight her, likely because Karis is one of the few fighters that actually has a major promotional outfit behind her, fighting on a major platform, Sky Sports. We talked about that here on the channel, that Elizabeth Oshoba was calling her out. She wants to fight her. If she climbs up these ranks, she might. Some others. What makes Elizabeth Oshoba such a dangerous fight and such a dangerous fighter is you can see that this fighter knows their way around the ring. They've got real boxing acumen, boxing skills, but they've got a lot of size as well, using those long levers to manage the distance and lay into an opponent. Physically strong, powerful. Power. I don't envy Camilla Panatta. I don't envy her at all. I like Elizabeth Oshoba to win that fight. Might sound presumptuous, but Elizabeth is a fighter that I'm very impressed with. Supposed to be going down in Dubai. It hasn't been officially announced, and it's not yet registered on BoxRec, but it's on the WBA website's schedule for upcoming fights. I don't know what the rest of that card is going to look like or who specifically is promoting it, but it's there. It's going down. For the WBA gold title, obviously whoever wins the fight moves up in the ranks. It's going to be a good fight at first glance. I like Elizabeth Oshoba to win. We'll give the fight a closer look and the fighters, and we'll talk more about it as the fight date approaches.
Boots, where you at? Hearn, where you at? Where you at, Eddie? Where you at, Eddie? It's time to get it. I'm tired of fakers. I'm tired of fakers. Boxing, stand up. Blair the Flair, the most exciting man in boxing.
The lack of situational awareness really is jarring, because here you have a guy who thinks he's gonna separate the contenders from the pretenders while he's pretending to be Ric Flair. Does he think we all don't know where he got that from? Whose on-stage persona he is so co-opting, so appropriating? Selling wolf tickets because he's calling out IBF champion Jaron Ennis at a time when the whole world knows that he's spoken for, that he's currently under orders to face Karen Chukadzian for a second time, so he's not exactly at liberty to do anything with anyone else until that gets situated, because if he does, it'll cost him his belt. Meanwhile, Adrian Clark, who manages the career of Brian Norman, posted a quote to his social media account that reads, "Don't put the sport of boxing before the business side of boxing. Educate yourself." On what? How to duck? Be wary of any American-based fighter or any American fighter that all of a sudden starts talking about the business. They want to focus on the business of boxing. That's duck talk. It's not that boxing isn't a business. It's that every sport that is a sport is also a business. But those sports don't stop being sports for the sake of business, so you cannot use that excuse here. All you did was get out of a difficult fight that would have paid you more money so that you can fight in a safer fight that pays you less money. Though because it's safer in your mind's eye, it's worth the sacrifice, because you're nowhere near as ambitious or able to as you let on. The only reason you bailed on Boots is because you don't think you can beat him. If you felt you could beat him, like you think you can beat Derek Cuevas, or like you felt you could beat Giovanni Santillán, then you would have fought Boots for the career high purse. This code language. If you are now choosing to try and make the $1.7 million that Matchroom offered you to fight Boots spread across 2 to 3 fights, all that means is that you're working harder for the same money you could have got for 1 fight. Does that sound like smart business? If it takes you 2 fights or 3 fights to make the $1.7 million that Eddie was about to give you, you're just doing more work for the same money. And the only reason you're doing it is to stay in safe fights. Because you didn't think you could win that one. Back to Blair. I would love to see Jaron Ennis beat the brakes off of Blair Cobbs, because I didn't forget when Alexis Rocha beat the brakes off of Blair Cobbs. It was one of the more funny ass whoopings I've seen in recent memory, watching him ragdoll. It's like watching a palm tree swaying in the wind during a monsoon, during a hurricane, and getting uprooted. He beat the crap out of Blair Cobbs, and you don't think Jaron Ennis would do the same or worse? The problem. Boots is under orders to fight Karen Chukadzian again. Just talked about that. Though, even if he weren't under orders to fight Karen again, the real issue is Blair, like a lot of these fighters, is going to ask for a dollar amount that is well in excess of what he's worth, and perhaps more than Matchroom is willing to pay out. A dollar amount they know is excessive. Like the Normans knew it was excessive. That's what Blair's gonna ask for, because they like to do with Eddie things they won't do with anyone else. Things they wouldn't do to a Top Rank, to a Golden Boy, to a PBC. Blair fancies himself the most electric entertainer in boxing. What did he say? The best entertainer or the greatest entertainer? These hollow personas that these would-be boxers don. He's a clown. I ain't gonna sugarcoat shit. Blair the Flair Cobbs is a clown. You're a grown man in his mid-30s, literally running around using Ric Flair's gimmick. Woo! That's Ric Flair's material. Do you honestly think we don't know where you got that from? Woo! It's delusional. If you were the most electric entertainer in all of boxing, surely you would have had the marquee value to show for it by now, because you are in your mid-30s. In your last fight, you fought in a shoebox against an over-the-hill, past it, Adrian Bronor. Now, you think you're gonna go to Matchroom with your pockets turned out asking for the moon and the stars because you beat an over-the-hill Adrian Bronor. Give me a break. Oh, I think Jaron Ennis would do Blair Cobbs worse than he did Roman Villa. He'd do him worse than he did that guy, but that's if you can actually make the fight. And therein lies the problem. These guys make themselves difficult to work with. On purpose. Welcome to the American boxing scene. Because what would the American boxing scene be without these chatty patties? And businessmen. And super middleweight news ahead of this weekend's mega match between Canelo Alvarez and Edgar Berlanga. Canelo chimed in on Edgar's trash talk saying, "I like them like that. I like them to be confident and do a lot of talking. I like breaking their face when they play like that. I'm eagerly awaiting that day. It'll be the beatdown of his life. Canelo isn't lying. You know, Billy Joe Saunders, he had a lot to say ahead of his fight with Canelo, and you saw what Canelo did to him.
Smashed his eye all up.
I remember afterwards people saying that Billy Joe Saunders quit in his corner, or maybe that decision was made for him. Who knows? What we do know is that Billy was the talkative type ahead of the fight. He had a lot to say, and he paid for it during the fight. Edgar, he's got a lot to say.
He's the talkative type.
He's been saying that Canelo Alvarez is overlooking me, and that adds fuel to my fire.
We're all expecting a one-sided contest. We all are. But that doesn't mean the trash talk has to be lopsided. Not if Edgar has anything to say about it.
And he does. He says Canelo is overlooking me. He knows that I have the skills. He's probably doubting that too, and I don't hit that hard. He's 100% doubting my fighting IQ and experience. He thinks it's a cakewalk for him, and that he's just going to walk in and make 34, 35 million against the younger guy. He thinks it's a walkthrough, but he's going to walk into a brick wall. He's going to see something different. It is what it is. He can have that mindset, but he's going to get fucked up if he does. Into the fight with that kind of mindset, he's going to get fucked up. It's just more fire for me to win and whoop his ass. Berlanga is adamant that he has to outsmart Alvarez with his boxing IQ.
What IQ?
Implying that Canelo is overlooking Edgar is essentially implying that Edgar has qualities and characteristics that Canelo is not aware of, when I don't agree with that. I think Canelo is fully aware of what kind of fighter Edgar is. A risk-averse fighter, a fighter who could have had the necessary acid tests to prepare him for a fight like this, but he chose to be on easy street.
Canelo knows who's in front of him and why. I don't think Canelo's overlooking Edgar. I think he knows exactly what kind of fighter Edgar is.
I could have done camp anywhere, but I needed to be out here in nature, said Berlanga. When God wants you to elevate yourself in life, he isolates you, and that is why I am in isolation. I'm in the jail. I wanted to be trained in the wilderness at high altitude. I'm in the woods. There are bears who visit me every morning. I like being around that. That's the real fighter's mentality. It's putting me in the zone. It's putting me in the space to be locked in. The most important thing in boxing is the mind. Boxing is not physical. I can grab a guy who is 250 pounds and hits like a brick wall, but break him down with my mental IQ. You have to understand that IQ is everything in this sport. You have to be smart in the ring and how you're setting up the opponent to break them down and drown them in the later waters. These are all cliches. These are all things you hear other fighters say. Things that sound good.
Edgar's just trying to say things that sound good because he's got to say something.
We have the same jab.
No, you don't.
We have the same right hand.
No, you don't.
And the same combinations.
No, you don't.
It's just taking the mentality to a whole new level. He's gotten broken down numerous times. His code has already been cracked 4 times by Floyd Mayweather, Erislandy Lara, the first Golovkin fight, and Dimitri Bivol. I'm not going to go in there like, oh my god, I have to figure this guy out. It's just about the mind and showing him that I have the IQ and experience. Everything that he says I don't have, I'm going to show him that I have it. The people will see it this weekend.
Sounds like he plans on running.
For as much as you hear these guys talk themselves into a Canelo Alvarez fight like Jermell Charlo did a few fights ago, when they're actually in the ring with him after all that talking, what they resort to is running. And they like to call that IQ, fight IQ.
No, you're just running because you don't want to sit in the pocket with him. You know you can't contend with him there, so you just get on your bike most of the fight. Like Lara did, like Jermell did.
I don't even want to hear it from the boxing snobs about how important movement is. Of course, movement is important, but you can't spend the whole fight moving. At some point, you have to assert yourself. You have to make it a fight. And I have the sneaking suspicion that for all of Edgar's talk about his fight IQ, what he means to do is run. He's gonna run. He's gonna try to survive. He knows he can't contend with Canelo Alvarez's combinations, his power, mid-range to inside, so he's going to try to hang back, use his height and length because he is taller than Canelo, and move around.
Stay behind his jab.
And as Canelo Alvarez closes the distance, catching and shooting from out of the high guard, the output from Edgar is going to slow. And for Edgar, it's going to become about not getting knocked out. It's going to become about just surviving.
Like it did for Jamel.
All this talk about IQ, Edgar Berlanga's ring IQ. What about Canelo's ring IQ? The way they talk about this guy, you would think that he's just some flat-footed mauler.
That he ain't got no IQ of his own.
He's the one with the ring savvy and the ring IQ. The one thing Edgar said that's true is that they both got two hands, and they both got 2 feet, and there are only so many combinations you can throw, but it's when you throw them and how you throw them that separates a high IQ from a low one. Canelo Alvarez is a fighter that is often stereotyped.
It's what it is. They typecast him as a Mexican fighter like any other Mexican fighter. That's what they think.
While thinking of themselves as being so special, so slick, so tricky, when your idea of slickness...
You're just running, buddy.
Slickness, actual slickness, is being able to sit within the line of fire, within striking distance, rolling and riding punches, parrying punches, bobbing and weaving, and getting off punches of your own. But if you have to stay so far on the outside of a guy,
way out there,
you're not slick. Because being slick is being able to work around the punches, navigate through them to get off punches of your own, walking through the rain without getting wet. And when you're that far on the outside, that's not what you're doing.
Stay out there too long. That's not what you're doing. You're not being slick. You're just running.
So often, in the American boxing scene, it's the Americans that confuse the two. What it really is to be slick.
And what it is to be a track star.
Just a word to the wise. In a situation like this one, a unique one, where the guy starts talking all about his IQ this, and mentality that, the guy plans on running.
I don't begrudge Edgar Berlanga trying to be a more well-rounded fighter, more adaptable in a variety of situations, but he picked a hell of a time to do it.
He made a name for himself as a knockout merchant, a bruiser, a brawler, a strong one. And when he couldn't be that anymore, well, I guess now he wants to be a boxer.
More of a thinker.
Which isn't bad, but I reiterate, you picked a hell of a time to do it. See, the time to do that would have been in all the acid tests, all the litmus tests that Edgar didn't have en route to this fight. The kind of fights with the kind of fighters that he avoided.
So here we are.
My guess is this weekend, this guy's gonna run.